Morris, and you are about to embark on the next Pioneer Knowledge Services Because You Need to Know, a digital resource for you to listen to folks share their experience and knowledge around the field of knowledge management and nonprofit work. If your company or organization would like to help us continue this mission and sponsor one of our shows, email byntk@pioneer-ks.org. Joining us for the second segment, featuring Susan Tenby of TechSoup organization, which is a global nonprofit organization. Welcome, Susan, and welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be back.
Let's talk here. The first volley of our conversation was all about you. Where you got your start? Why are you such a super trooper when it comes to building community? This time we're going to talk about resources and a little bit more about some of the under the hood elements of getting people involved and for the right reasons. Let's talk about some of the things you had quoted in an earlier discussion with me. Success is not by the number of followers. Can you talk a little more about that?
What I've noticed, both with my day job and with the side hustle, is the first thing people say to me who aren't experienced in online community is, hey, we only have 4,000 followers. We need to get to 400,000 by next week. How can you do that? And, the truth is that's the absolute wrong way to think about online community. It's not about how many followers you have. You can buy followers. They're bots. They're called bots. And you can buy them on eBay. It's not about how many followers you have. It's about how many engaged users you have. And I'm not talking even about 100. David Spinks, who's an online community expert, whom I recommend that everybody subscribe to his blog, recently said, you don't need 100 true fans. You just need 10 really engaged users to help your community move. Considering that the poster to lurker ratio, 1 to 10 in a healthy...
Before you go farther, can you define what that means?
The poster to lurker ratio is the ratio of people who post versus read in an online community. Okay. Read a question or post a question. So
they're not participating, they're just...
reading. Yeah, they might be Googling a question and they land at a forum or something like that. The poster to lurker ratio in an online community for a successful community is 1 to 10. One poster per 10 lurkers. Knowing that, having 10 engaged posters that you could name off the top of your head shows that you have a really good community.
Okay.
And a community with 1,000 people, if you can call 10 people in and say, hey, I want to have a group call with you guys and listen to you and take feedback from you and your ideas, that's what I recommend. I think that's the best way, because you're so close to your community that you might not be thinking about it from the very ground. You're thinking about it from a top-down perspective. I mean, we at the TechSoup community have had the same hosts, the same group of about 10 to 12 hosts for decades. That's gold. These people are so invested. It's more their community than it's yours, and you're just providing the infrastructure.
Well, walk me through what that structure you just spoke about looks like. So an organization that's looking to do this could maybe copy that.
Yep. So the way that an organization could build this kind of cadre of experts and volunteer moderators and hosts would be, you could do, if it's an email list, you could do what I did in the old days. It still works, where you filter it into Outlook or whichever mail client you use and do a sort on who. You can also do it manually in social media, like in Facebook. You can look for names that are familiar. If you have the tools in your forum, you can go search on the back end and see who's logging in most frequently and who's posting most frequently. And the forum tools will tell you. And you can use the badge mechanisms to reward those people by awarding them a badge, like a star. I recommend, just by manually assessing your own forum, you can see who's asking the questions most frequently, who's answering people's questions, who's liking posts and being an engaged member and making you notice them. And once you do, let them know that you notice them, thank them, write them backstage, as I say, kind of write them a DM and say, hey, I notice you. Thank you so much. You might start with sending them some swag. We have TechSoup socks. We have, keychains and notebooks. Like, just a thank you goes a long way.
Yeah.
It might be that you give them something free, access to something like feedback on.
Let me just break in. Is there like a school bus outside? It's like, holy cow. Come on, you holler out the window. Hey, keep that.
You move your baby. If it wasn't my downstairs neighbor, I would. They know me well enough. I'm going to tell them I'm recording. Hold on 1 second. Hold on.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Claire. Hey, Claire. I'm sorry. He's throwing a tantrum and laying on the sidewalk. So I can't really stop it. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't want to be like that person, but I feel that way. Okay, so what were we talking about?
We were talking about building those engaging followers. And
with every successful community, no matter how small, you should follow this methodology of DMing and saying to your star users, hey, I recognize you. I'd love to get you in a group call. What it will do is not only give you feedback from the ground up, but it will also build, kind of create ownership, a sense of ownership from those star members, which will help you. You want them to feel invested and to feel the sense of ownership. It will help you manage your community.
Well, how does an organization go from recognizing and endorsing someone to represent their organization? That's got to be a bit of a liability, isn't it?
So we have an ambassador program that we just launched at TechSoup.
Okay.
It's a ladder of engagement. We don't tell them that they can identify as a TechSoup staff member. But we do send them to conferences as like a thank you. After, there's like the first step, which is like the sending them socks kind of thank you. And then it's like getting them on a call. And then after they've represented their knowledge and their expertise in our forums by answering questions and maybe writing blogs and participating in webinars, and we can trust them, we might send them to a conference to speak as a TechSoup ambassador. It doesn't mean that they're representing the organization as a staff member, but it's one step above being a regular user. And it's like a ladder of engagement. And the more you do this, it will help you grow your community, because the concept is based on the fact that everybody wants to be famous, whether they know it or not. Giving them that kind of amplification, giving the members that kind of amplification as, hey, we think this person's really smart. Mm-hmm. They're doing this great stuff. They are experts. Giving them that mm-hmm. platform will encourage them to promote it to their own networks, thereby amplifying, boosting your signal and amplifying your own message, extending the edges of your own network.
But how do you build in quality checks? I just have to assume in such a large footprint, digitally and physically, that TechSoup occupies, how do you just check to make sure everything's good?
I mean, you have to at some point have a disclaimer saying, we're not responsible if some person brings down your network. But unless it's the membership-based community I was talking about earlier, Quad, which is actually staffed by TechSoup staff. It's staffed by our IT guys, basically. So our IT department, I should say, although they are the guys that are doing it are actually guys. So there has to be some sort of disclaimer language like, hey, we hope this is helpful for you, but we aren't taking responsibility if it's not.
Do you require like an NDA kind of signature for somebody that's a power user, like an ambassador?
No, we don't, because they're not disclosing there's no secret that they would be privy to that we would.
Oh, got it.
There's no like company IP that they would have.
That's kind of the realm that folks that are looking to build a community, the common phraseology is community of practice, community of purpose. These are different types of functional communities. But you're talking about kind of a hybrid, is that you want a community of engagement around a topic and around a theme.
Can you repeat your question or rephrase it?
Community of practice is one, and a community of purpose are two different types.
I can explain what those are if you want.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so there are different types of communities. There's communities of practice, which are, let's say, Excel users, which might talk about how to make a pivot table, or web designers. So they form a community around a specific practice. And then there's communities of purpose, bird watchers, people who are interested in envirotech, or people who are interested in food insecurity, that there's a common purpose that brings their communities together. And then there are a third type of communities, which are the communities that are project-based. Everybody who's in marathon training group or Burning Man. And once the project is over, or a community around a web project, once it's completed, then they don't participate in the community anymore. Even with, for example, a hack. Let's say that there was a hack, a security breach. We all jump into a community to discuss it. Once it's resolved, the community can close.
Dissipates, yeah. That is a big consideration that you would suggest that an organization look at, is the lifetime arc of projected usefulness. In a design feature of the why, when you're answering the why are we doing this, you just answered a couple of lifeline kind of segments that are different and for different reasons. And I think that's a big consideration to look at, because this is a resource, not intensive, but an organization has to have a successful, my guess, successful engagement with your community. You got to have some resources.
Yeah, you shouldn't ever farm it out to an intern. You should always remember that social media is not the same as online community. You can decide where you want your online community. It could live in Facebook or LinkedIn as a group, but it's not the same as a page. If you don't want to have a separate forum, like maybe there's no reason to have it live standalone, it doesn't need to be closed or private, it doesn't need to be paywalled, then you might want to have it where your community already is. So for example, Facebook, but you need to be able to resource the forum itself or the group itself with somebody that can answer questions and tag others. Like if they can't answer a question, they can tag someone who can.
Somebody that helps curate that flow and
moderate the discussion.
Yeah, moderate. Yeah.
And if it starts to get contentious, somebody who can say, hey, this is out of bounds.
Yep, you're out of the pool.
Yeah.
In that construction phase of building this, is there a perception or a reality that says if our market, our age demographic of the folks we want to communicate with, that is our engagement community, is between 19 and 31, is there a method out there somewhere that says don't use Facebook, that's for old people, don't use LinkedIn, that's for business people? I mean, is there a map out there to help organizations figure out what channel do I even go in?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with a map. I mean, I guess you could ask CMX, but I would recommend for you to think about, where is your constituency? Where are they? And if they're on Instagram, that's not a good tool for community. Instagram is a visual platform. It's not a community-based tool. You don't even have clickable links in Instagram unless you do a link tree or link in bio situation.
Okay.
I recommend, are they in Twitter? Are they, you have to figure out where your people are, and consultants can help if you can't, but you probably know where your community is, and that would be the first.
Do you not see an age bracket anywhere of who's using what?
I don't think that young people are using Facebook. They're not. I think a lot of young people are using LinkedIn groups. I think that I'm seeing more and more people using Alignable. Alignable is like a LinkedIn alternative. It's a business-based, kind of like nextdoor.com. It's like location-based business community. So I'm seeing more and more people use that. But again, it does depend on where your constituency is. Yeah. There are also app-based communities. People use Band for things that other than bands. The Band app is being used for communities. WhatsApp, like in Europe, everybody uses WhatsApp. So you really do have to start with where your community is, and then you figure out based on that what to do. And if you need to put your own platform up, like we put up Quad, the new community in TechSoup, using Circle.
You're using all kinds of words. I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. What's Circle?
Circle.so is the platform that we built Quad in, which is a wonderful new community platform that's very easy to use.
Is there an example of that anywhere that people can look at, or do they have to join the club?
I think there might be an open community of Circle users. Let me just try to grab that real quick.
That's the, okay, so it's just called circle.so.
Yeah, circle.so. So you can look, I think there is a Circle community so you can see what it looks like?
Now, wait a minute. All right, so this is the deal. We're talking about stuff that I have somewhat of a finger in the pie of. You're showing me stuff I never even heard of before. My question is this: how does an organization pin the tail on the donkey today and not switch gears a month from now when something else pops up?
How do we know that a platform's not going to go under or become less popular once we invest in it? So I think that's a super valid question. It's an argument for not using a new startup, and I feel bad for the ones that are new, fabulous, because I've spoken to some really helpful community platforms that are visionary, but I'm afraid.
Yeah,
so
it's hard to park your wagon in something that it's like, wow, you're betting all the horses on this one gig. And it's like,
It makes it difficult for community startups, but maybe they start with giving free instances to people. I mean, I've seen many come and go. It's also good to have, that's an argument for having redundancy and having your community across platforms, not just in one place.
Good point. Good point. It's just like investing. You're going to have a little bit over here, a little bit over there, because you're not sure which is going to win the race and who's going to lose, but you're just kind of playing the field. The question is that once you have this investment, what's your measurement of success? I mean, you are the leader of this element, correct?
Correct. With the TechSoup community, we've switched kind of midstream. We've switched platforms multiple times. And I would say the measure of success for the TechSoup community is that the attrition wasn't huge. It was pretty minimal, and the engagement is actually up over where it was 3 years ago when we were on a different platform. So I would say a measure of success is, does your community survive when you switch platforms? Are you able to successfully migrate the membership? I would say another measure of success is, does a question get answered within 24 hours? I insist on that in terms of the work I'm doing. I will prioritize it over other things. Another measure of success is, are people asking and answering each other's questions without you having to intervene? Are they bringing it to your attention, saying, hey, this is cool? Like, is your super fan base, your treasured user, your top 10, friendly people that you can tap, is that growing? Those are some measures of success.
Okay.
And are you seeing people refer to your community across platforms? So are you seeing people tweet about your community if it's on Facebook, or post about it on Facebook if it's in Twitter? That's another a big measure of success.
If you're getting recognition from an outside source or a similar source in your industry for those types of incidents, I mean, that's good news, right? You're being noticed, you're getting your visibility up.
It's much more valuable than you talking about your own community. Having someone else recommend your community is much more valuable than you tweeting about it.
Well, before we roll out, I want to hear all about how you turn
a tweet into a meeting.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I have it pinned on my Twitter page, but let me, so basically, I'm not going to read each step. It's a methodology that I kind of made up that actually seems to work almost every time. And it's about, when you find someone on Twitter, the difference between like Twitter versus LinkedIn or Facebook is, with those platforms, someone has to opt in and say, yes, I'll be connected to you. Whereas Twitter, what makes Twitter kind of magical and great is that you have open access to anyone on Twitter. So it could be someone who is famous, an influencer or royalty or whatever, however you want to call it. The way that you would turn the tweet into the meeting, as it were, so to speak, is that you would first of all follow them. Then you would like and retweet certain tweets of theirs, not just at the beginning, because then it's too obvious, but kind of search down the tweet stream and kind of ping, maybe respond to, comment, like, and retweet some stuff further down in their tweet stream. Add them to a Twitter list that's public with a flattering name, like social media influencer or innovative thinkers in philanthropy or something like that, some flattering name of a Twitter list. So you're kind of bringing them into a group, a vertical group that would make them feel good, retweeting their stuff with comment, not just what I call a drive-by retweet, but retweeting with the quote retweet function so you can explain to your followers what makes their tweet interesting to you. Doing that more than once, responding to someone else's post and saying, hey, I think that this person, and tagging them, would be a great person to respond to this or would have a lot of knowledge about this. So pointing to them, putting them kind of in the front of your tweet stream, and then eventually they'll probably notice you and follow you back. And then you DM them, and then you create a meeting with them.
So when you first said this, I thought you were using a methodology to run your meetings with,
No.
but this is actually to make a opportunity happen more than, all right. So it's how to knock on the door. It's a cold calling technique of connecting to somebody.
Right. For example, there's a guy, and if he's listening, he'll know his name. This guy named Rick Fink, who I've never met, but he's somehow networked with me online, and he's a member of all of my social networks across. He's my number one super fan. I don't know him. He's constantly responding to my tweets. So he was effective at it. And people have even been effective at it, at getting me to notice them and hire them through this methodology. Think that, there's a skill there, and there's something there.
It's people that recognize and take advantage of opportunities that now exist in a different way than they did 20 years ago.
Yep, exactly.
So that's the continual challenge, I think, to the human framework, is to continue to adapt.
And having an open discussion platform like Twitter, or microblog, as they used to call it, allows you to actually have a conversation with somebody that you would never have had an opportunity to talk to in the past. I mean, sometimes I'm responding to news and I'll be tweeting directly at a journalist, and then all of a sudden they hear me and they respond. And like, that's pretty definite new. That's an innovation in comms and communications technology.
Yeah, it's given us all new methods and intersections of communicating and connecting that never existed before. And it's just going to continue to evolve.
Right.
Before we go, we wanted to talk about transition, decommission, and recommission. How does an organization create value in its own capacities if they don't look at platforms, methods, systems in a way that says, you know what, this horse needs to go to pasture. We're done with this. We need to move on. Or instead of cobbling up something forever just because.
So kind of the idea is when to know how to sunset a community, how to transition it into new ownership, or sunset it entirely, how to give it to its members when you no longer want to support it. That's an important part of community management too. You can't keep everything going forever.
And ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you have to kind of evaluate, like, is it worth the ROI? And so many times in my career, we've figured out that although the community, it still has members, and maybe it's not worth completely shutting down. There's no reason to shut it down. We can't personally support it anymore. Either it's no longer grant funded, or we have other grant funded projects as a nonprofit that take priority, or we don't have a resource because the resource has moved on in the organization or moved to a different department. That gives us an opportunity, like it just happened with TechSoup Connect, our regional meetups. During the pandemic, obviously regional stopped. And so they became virtual, which led to, instead of 250, we had 30, and they were only online. So it gave us this kind of reset where let's look at this program. Is this program still a priority for us? And what we resolved and decided was, although we don't need to shut down the program. And this is not the first time I've done this. This is the second or third time that we've done this as an organization. We've turned it over to the members. When a community is really healthy, the members can just take it and go with it. They still want to be there. We don't have to necessarily support the management, and we can just hand it over. That's another argument in favor of having the super fans. We hand it over to them, and then they take it over. Sometimes we might provide the infrastructure, meaning the platform, paying the platform fees, and sometimes we might not. It might be a transition in that the volunteers end up fundraising, like for the Second Life community that I launched a long time ago in the early 2000s. We ended up handing that over to the members, and they still have it going. It's a community of nonprofits in Second Life.
Hmm.
They fundraise and they keep it going. But for TechSoup Connect, we decided, at least for the time being, that we would pay for the platform fees, but we would turn the management over to the members and let it be volunteer run.
So how does an organization plant that strategic end state at the beginning? Because you need to somehow build some markers in to say when to start.
I mean, we have never built it in at the beginning.
Okay.
We never had. At this point, if it isn't going well, we turn it off or we pivot, because it's so organic with online community that you just want it to grow, and you see as it goes. But if after like 3 months to 6 months, you're seeing nothing's growing, then you might reconsider, like, what can we do? We've invested a lot, like both of those communities I mentioned, 10 years of investment. With the TechSoup forums, we're still managing it, and we have the volunteer forum hosts, and we've moved it to different platforms, but we're doing it in a different fashion, because with the TechSoup forums, it was launched before all these other community tools even existed, like social media. So now it serves a different purpose. But you do have to kind of just have check-ins. And I recommend having a monthly meeting with the members, the super fans, having a monthly call with them and getting face-to-face, so they aren't just a name on a screen, but you get on a Zoom call and you have open discussions. And how do you guys think it's going? How could we improve it? Never forget that. Don't keep your community hidden behind a wall, even if there is a paywall. Don't keep it gated. Export snippets of it, whether it's small videos or infographics or blog posts or tweets, to promote it and then get people interested to expand it. Because otherwise, there's no way you can expand it beyond who's already in it.
You're talking about your favorite term, highly shareable content.
That's right. All social media content, all content you produce, if you're a person who's community minded, should be highly shareable. So for example, when you have an event, in Eventbrite, they allow you to customize the URL. So instead of having having the URL be really long, I use the customizable feature. If you have a URL that's easy to pronounce, then it's highly shareable. So you can say it, and having content that is shareable, like extracting content from your community that is highly shareable, that people want to share. You want to make it easy for people to share it, because if people are publishing on their social media channels, sometimes it's hard to curate content and to know what to post. So giving them highly shareable content gives them a reason to share about you. An example of that is Heather Mansfield, who has @nonprofits on Twitter, the Twitter handle @nonprofits, and she's Nonprofit Tech for Good on Facebook and LinkedIn. She creates highly shareable content all the time. She's one of my mainstays as someone whose content I share through the TechSoup channels on the regular. And she makes a living doing this, but she creates highly shareable content. There are other brands that do that too. Donor Perfect is an example. There are other channels that create this highly shareable content that we use on social media.
So is the newsletter dead?
No, No, the newsletter is the best way, because people see so much noise in their feed that the newsletter gets right in front of them. And more internal conversations at organizations are being moved into Slack. Your email has become less noisy. So hitting people, you also need to hit people from multiple to approach, I should say, instead of hit, to approach people from multiple channels, so that it isn't until the fourth message that they're going to go, oh yeah, there's an event. I saw an event from TechSoup. That's right. Yeah. Approaching them from multiple channels is the way to go. And for us, we see that newsletter, our direct newsletter is the top way that people, I'm talking about like 75%, are getting it from the newsletter. Wow. And it's 25% that are getting it through other means. So yeah, newsletter is not dead.
No, well, that's interesting. But the model has changed, right? Because now it's become more of a multimedia extravaganza type thing versus a static newsletter.
That's right. Yeah. It's much more engaged and it's much more interactive, and there's embedded stuff and HTML newsletters, and you just have to make sure you don't get blacklisted, and there's ways to be on safe sender lists. Yeah, that's a whole other animal.
That's so easy. I mean, this is like a full-time job.
Yep, exactly.
Oh my. Well, thank you very much for sharing all your experience and expertise, Susan.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
You have just finished our latest Because You Need to Know, a public service of Pioneer Knowledge Services. Please join us on LinkedIn and find us at pioneer-ks.org.